G'day everyone, let me show you how to make tracks come out of your camera in Photoshop. My name is Hoy and I make tutorials on Photoshop and Illustrator. In this video, we'll learn about choosing the right images for this effect, masking, using channels and curves. So if you want to follow along, just click on the link in the description below. Okay, so to get started, let's open the files that you downloaded from the description below. Go to File, Open, navigate to the folder that you saved your files into, and select both of them and press Open. Now the photos will open in two separate tabs. What we need to do is to bring one of them into the other. So with this selected, I'm going to move this to the background tab. So I'm going to just go back to here, click on my mouse, and then drag, and then hover over the background image, and then move my mouse inside the picture, and then with Shift pressed on my keyboard, I'm going to let go of my mouse. And so what Shift does is to center the picture onto the canvas. If I didn't press Shift, then the picture will simply be placed anywhere where my cursor is. So let me just demonstrate that. I'm going to press Command Z to undo. Now go back to my tracks picture, click, drag, and then hover over the corner of my image just to highlight the effect, and then release my mouse. You can see that the center of the picture is actually where the cursor of my mouse is. So that's the difference that Shift makes. I'm going to move the picture down a bit so I can see the tracks, and we run into the first problem, which is I can't see the other picture behind it. So not a problem. What we need to do is just bring the photo behind it. On my layers panel, I'm going to click and drag the first layer underneath the background layer. But you see that I can't. No matter how many times I try, I can't. Oops, I just double clicked on that. And the reason why I can't is because the background layer is locked. You can see that from the padlock icon. To unlock it, just click on the icon and it will transform that background layer to a normal layer. For good housekeeping, let's rename this. I'm going to double click on this. Let's rename this to, say, camera, press enter, and double click on that. Let's call it tracks. So we're sort of back to where we first started. And so let's try again and move the tracks layer underneath the camera layer and then release that. So now we have the opposite problem where we can see the camera layer but not the tracks layer. So we click on the camera layer and then we reduce the opacity here, and you can see the icon changing. And now if I scrub, just click and hold and scrub to the left, the opacity of the camera layer reduces. So we'll just reduce it down to, say, 53%. That's okay. It's just so we can see both images at the same time. So you don't need to copy exactly 53 as long as you can see both images. I'm going to click on the tracks layer to select that layer, and then with my move tool selected, which is this one, or V as the keyboard shortcut, I'm going to move that layer. And what I want to do is move it so the tracks converge roughly in the center of that image there. So I'm just going to zoom in, and this is roughly where the image is. So once we're happy with the position of that, I'm going to go back to my camera layer, clicking on that, and then increase the opacity back to 100. Now the next step is to make a mask. And what mask does is to punch out a hole where the lens is. So to do that, make sure you've got the camera layer selected. Select your marquee tool here. Now by default, I think it has the rectangular marquee tool selected. So if your one shows the rectangular marquee tool, just press and hold on your mouse and then come over here and select the elliptical marquee tool. Your cursor will change into a crosshair, and then you drag out a ellipse like so. Now you can see that my ellipse is not a perfect circle. To make it a perfect circle, just press the shift button while you're dragging your mouse in and out, and that will make it into a perfect circle. The problem now is that my circle position doesn't line up exactly to where the lens is. Now I'll just undo that. Now I can redraw that, but I'll never quite get it or exactly where it is. So to adjust the marquee without letting go of your mouse and the shift button, we're going to do a bit of gymnastics with our hands. So press down the space bar while you're holding shift, while you're holding your mouse button, and then you can move your marquee selection like so. So with all those buttons clicked, I'm just going to move my selection to where I think the lens is. Once I got it roughly in position, I'm going to let go of my space bar only. I still have my finger on the shift button and my mouse, and then I can resize it from there. So I'm going to resize it from here, and that looks good. I'm going to let go of both the shift and the mouse button, and there we have our selection. Now, if you made a mistake and went, wow, I didn't quite get that, and you've already released all your buttons, your mouse button, your shift button, you can also go to Select, Transform Selection, and then make a edit afterwards. So here, if I've made the selection too big or too small, I can resize it here again. So holding my shift button will again make it a perfect circle. If I go down a bit again, it will resize it. If I don't have it in the right position, I can always reposition it. And once I have it in a good position, then I commit that change by selecting this checkbox here. But my selection was pretty good to begin with, so I will undo that and go back to my original selection here. The next step is to create a mask out of it. So what we want to do is select this button, the mask button, and it's created a mask. But the only problem is that it's created a mask with everything we don't want inside it. So with the mask selected, just click on that, press Command I on your keyboard to inverse that mask. And what we have is a perfect cutout. I'm just going to zoom out a bit by pressing Command 0 on my keyboard. So the next thing to do is to show the rest of the tracks, so the tracks come out of the camera and not just be confined within the lens. So to do that, click on your camera track, reduce the opacity so once again you see the tracks layer, and then we're going to make another mask. But this time we're going to use the pen tool. If you haven't used the pen tool, it can be a bit daunting, but don't worry, I'm going to walk you through step by step. The pen tool is over here, or you can press the keyboard shortcut P. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to zoom in by pressing Option and pushing my scroll wheel up on my mouse. And I'm going to start by making a point inside the mask that we've just made. And the mask that we just made is this circle here. So it's important that we start inside. So I'm going to click on here once and then drag it out. If you don't have this stringy bit, then you just go up to your settings here and make sure that the rubber band is checked. Now what we're going to do is make a selection of the track. So this is a bit too big, so I'm going to zoom out a bit by pressing Option and pushing my mouse scroll wheel down and panning across by holding my space bar and dragging my mouse to reposition it. And then click here, just follow the track, and then another click here, another click here, another click here, and just follow the track back into the lens and then close the loop. Now you see, once I've touched on the original anchor point, the pen icon will have a circle next to it. That shows you that the loop will be closed. So make sure that you have that little circle next to your pen icon, otherwise it would not close the loop. So click on that. We're going to make a selection out of it. So right click on your mouse and then select make selection. Here we're going to put our feather radius to 2 pixels, and what that means is that the edge will be a bit blurred by 2 pixels. If we don't blur the edge along the track will be very, very hard and abrupt. We'll tick anti-alias to make the edges smoother. If you don't have that tick, then it will be a bit jagged, and we'll keep new selection checked. Press OK, and then the path will be turned into marching ants. So now we have to make a mask out of the path that we just drew. So to do that, click on your mask, and with black as your foreground color, if you don't have your foreground color as black, you can always hit D on your keyboard to reset your color palette. The problem is that the default is white as foreground and black as background. You can toggle that by pressing this button here or X on your keyboard. I'm just going to press X, and that will toggle it to black. Again, with my mask selected and my foreground color set as black, I'm going to press Option Delete, and that will reveal this path here. I'm going to increase my opacity to 100 so I can see what we've just done a bit better. So I'm going to deselect this by pressing Command D, or if you're not one for shortcuts, you can go to Select and Deselect. Now, at a distance, this looks okay, but if I just zoom in here, you see my selection isn't quite perfect. You can still see the background layer. I leave it in here. I pretend it's on purpose, but I leave it in here just to show that, you know, your selection may not be 100% perfect. So let's fix that mask by clicking on the mask, grabbing our pen tool, make another path. So just click outside of the canvas here and just make sure that your rubber band or your path follows carefully the track. To pan or scroll up the picture, just press spacebar and then drag your mouse further up like so, and then release both buttons. And by doing that, you'll return your tool to your pen tool, and then just keep going inside to where you want to be. And then just zoom in, something like this. Click once, and then click once out here, zoom back out, and then somewhere outside the canvas, and then close the path here. Again, we need to make a selection out of this. So right click, make selection, feather radius of 2 is okay. Now make sure your mask is selected. Now this time we need your foreground color as white because we're showing the contents of this layer. So you can toggle this so your background color is white, or you can press X on your keyboard and then press Option Delete on the keyboard. Now we need to do that for the other side of the track. So I'm just going to do that very quickly. And we're almost there. But the problem is that the tracks layer look a bit warmer than this camera layer here. The camera layer shows a bit more blue, eliciting more cold feeling, whereas the camera track, it's got more warmth, more reddish, orangey, which gives you more warmth to the photo. So while you may want to show this effect to your families and friends and say, hey, look at what I did, they may look at it and go, well, it's great, but you know, I can sort of tell that it's a composite. So what we want to do is to add more warmth or reddish or orangey hue to the camera layer. To do that, we go to the channels panel, and if you don't have that on your Photoshop, go to Window and just make sure channels is selected. So going back to the channels panel, what we want to see is each of the channels, which one has the greatest contrast. And by contrast, what I mean is which one has more blacks and whites instead of gray. So we don't want a gray picture. We want to choose the channel with the most contrast. So looking at the red, it's kind of grayish. The green, it's a bit more darkish. The shadows are a bit more darkish than the red channel, and the highlights are a bit brighter, I think. With the blue channels, it's less contrast than green, I think. You might disagree, but just select the channel that has the greatest contrast. According to my eye, it looks like green has the greatest contrast. Now we can't edit directly on the green channel, otherwise it would just ruin all the greens in the image. We're going to duplicate that by dragging the green channel onto this icon here, and then you'll see there's a green copy. Now we want to make a selection out of this by selecting this and pressing Command click on your mouse. We go back to our RGB channel, go back to our layers, and we're going to create a curves adjustment layer by clicking here, go to curves, and the curves will show up. Now I'm just going to readjust this panel so you can see a bit more out of it. In the channels, RGB channels drop down, select red, and the reason why we're selecting red is because that's the color we want to inject more of. So click on red, and somewhere around the middle, just drag the curve up. Now you can see the image will become a bit warmer. If I go the opposite direction, it will give me the complementary color of red, which is cyan, which isn't what we want. So I'm just going to go up something like this. You can adjust it however you like. And the final step is just to clip the curves layer to the camera layer here, because by not clipping it, this red is applied to all the layers. So if I turn on the clipping mask by clicking this icon here, clipping mask on, off. Now, if you want to exaggerate the reds of the tracks layer, then you don't need to clip it. So there you have it, how to make tracks come out of your camera in Photoshop. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe to this video and hit the bell icon so you can get notified for when the next video is out.